just want to say, thanks to Jane and the library for having me. I think this is a really important topic, and I'm very passionate about all things mental health, so I'm very excited about tonight. To start, I just want to say, in a perfect world, any conversation about mental health, I would love it to be in person. I would love us all to be in a big circle and just having a conversation. Really just chatting about how we're feeling and how we can feel better, because at the end of the day, that's really what this talk is about. Unfortunately, right now, we're not quite in a perfect world. We're getting there. So we're going to do this via Zoom. I will say I am stepping outside of my comfort zone. This is not a comfortable thing for me. I don't know why Zoom feels so much different than an in-person chat, but it does. So just sort of bear with me. If I get talking too fast, which I tend to do when I'm a little bit nervous, I'll just ask those who have their camera on to give me a little bit of a wave. Let me know. I'll kind of take a breath and slow down. I really want this to be the closest thing to a conversation we can have. So for those of you who are comfortable leaving your cameras on, please do so. And if you want to turn your mic off at any point throughout the conversation, and make a comment or ask me a question, again, please do so. I will also obviously be reserving some time at the end of the conversation for more questions as well, okay? And I might be checking in again. I know a few of you are leaving your cameras on. I think that's great. So I have, there's kind of a few questions. So raise of hands if it's something you're experiencing or not experiencing, if you're comfortable sharing. Let's see. Okay, so today we're talking about mental health hacks. And I would actually say these are really habits that I'm hoping to empower my patients to implement in order to optimize mental health. I will go so far to get even pickier and say these are actually the foundations to mental health. So these are actionable steps to build a strong foundation for our mental health. We're going to chat about sleep, about nutrition, about exercise, and about connection today. And really, those are things that are just essential to our overall health. Today's topic is mental health. So for the purpose of today, we're going to talk about how these lifestyle habits affect our mental health. So what is mental health? Let's start there. I believe mental health is a state of mental, emotional balance or ease or peace, okay? It is not the absence of highs and lows. We are all gonna have highs. We are all gonna have lows. We are all gonna experience grief or stress or overwhelm to some extent. Depending on the situation, obviously. Mental health implies that we are able to return to that state of ease or peace or balance again and again and again. So I really want everyone today to leave with a few tools that will allow them to, when they're experiencing stress or overwhelm, or they're feeling a little low, that they can bring themselves to, again, that state of balance again and again. I want you to feel as though you have the tools to do that. I'm going to be using the word struggle quite a bit tonight in an effort to describe sort of a state of dis-ease, right? So struggle is going to be different for any one of you. Some of you will already have a diagnosis of depression and anxiety, potentially medicated for that, maybe not. Some of you aren't there yet. Some of you are simply feeling a little more stressed. The last 2 years have been tricky. Maybe feeling a little more overwhelmed, maybe feeling a little more isolated, a little low. For that population, this conversation really becomes more of a prevention conversation. We're talking about all the things that we can do in order to prevent, depression and anxiety from creeping in. For others who are already experiencing these issues to a profound degree, then this conversation is really about treatment. What are the foundations? What are the things we can do to help optimize how you're feeling and potentially help even to treat the issue? You will notice that I'm looking over at notes. I tend to get going on a bit of a tangent with these things because I am, as I say, quite passionate about this. So I do have some notes just kind of keep me focused on my on where I am here. The foundations of sleep, nutrition, exercise, connection, they're also universal. So I work with teens, I work with postmenopausal women, I work with men, I work with postpartum women. These foundations are going to apply to everyone. And I do think in healthcare today, there is sort of a lack of attention on these things. You know, not always, but sometimes we are struggling. We go to our medical doctor and there's just not the time for them to be asking about, how are you sleeping? Are you moving your body? What are you eating on a day-to-day basis? And so the sort of next step is how, you know, can we medicate this? And I appreciate that there's definitely a place for that. But in my opinion, the first step needs to be these foundations. Are you sleeping? What are you eating? Are you eating properly to support your mental health? Are you moving your body? Are you connected? What is social support like? Are you connected to self at the moment? Are you even asking yourself some of these tough questions in terms of how you're really feeling? And that's why I feel like this conversation is so important. I do feel like there is sort of a gap, a bit of a disconnect in terms of building the foundation first and then sort of building on top of that. So we're going to chat about these foundations today. If you're someone that wants article names and authors and specific references, please contact me after the chat. I'm not going to reference specific articles, but I do think it's really important that everyone know that these are very science-based recommendations. There is a ton of literature to support the things that I'm going to be talking about today. They are deeply rooted sort of in scientific literature, and I'm not going to, again, get too deep into the sort of neuroscience behind it, but certainly a lot of the habits that we're going to be chatting about today are meant to be increasing our neurochemicals like dopamine and serotonin, and we're going to talk a little bit about melatonin and all of these things. Again, you know, there's an actual mechanism of action here and how these actions are physiologically changing what is happening in the body to improve mood. So I think it's important to note that these are not just things that I'm seeing in my practice, although that has some merit as well, but these are actually really scientifically based, very effective recommendations. Okay, so let's get into the habits that we are talking about, these foundations, as I said, and we'll start with sleep, because I really do feel like sleep is by far the most important. I feel like if we are sleeping well, then we are motivated to do these other activities, to implement these other habits, and it's sort of a positive cycle, right? We sleep better, we are able to make more conscious and healthy decisions when it comes to food. We have the energy to move our body more, therefore we sleep better. And again, it's this positive cycle. So I really do want to start with sleep. I think it is key. Again, I know a few people have cameras on. Again, if you're comfortable, sort of a show of hands, anyone who might be having some sleep difficulties at this point. And I'll raise my hand. I'm not a great sleeper. Awesome, thank you. So there tends to be kind of three issues when it comes to sleep. Number one is simply we just aren't in bed long enough. So we're going to bed too late, we're getting up too early, we're not allowing ourselves enough time to sleep. Then there's those people who are going to bed at a good time, but it may take an hour and a half, hopefully not more, but sometimes even more to fall asleep. So there's an issue, sort of a sleep onset insomnia that we're dealing with. And then in another population, falling asleep, no problem, but this is the population that's waking up throughout the night. So this is more of a sleep maintenance insomnia. I will say it is entirely normal to have to get up and go to the washroom throughout the night. That's not abnormal. In a perfect world, I want you doing it once, maybe twice. I don't want you doing it more than that. The key really is that you're able to fall asleep quickly again. If you're not, then that's something we need to work on, obviously, to improve the quality of sleep. Okay, so habit number 1. We are going to aim, this is a simple one, in my opinion anyway, but we're going to aim to not have any caffeine past about 10, 11 a.m. Okay, so the half-life of coffee or caffeine is about 6 hours. Now, some people are definitely faster metabolizers when it comes to coffee, but we're going to just take the general population. That means that potentially we are not done metabolizing a cup of coffee until about 10 p.m. if we're having it after or at 10 o'clock, right? There's a potential that that coffee is still in our system even at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So that, to me, again, it is a simple one. We want to have a cup of coffee in the morning. I'm fine with that. No problems there. But ideally have 1, maybe 2, and then we're done at around 10 or 11 a.m. This is especially important for those people who are having trouble sleeping and then find they have an afternoon cup of coffee to improve energy or keep them focused for the afternoon. And then again, the problem is they're having trouble sleeping. And again, we get into this cycle, but it's more of a vicious cycle. So we're going to try to cut out caffeine around 10 or 11 a.m. Certainly go to town on your herbal teas or a decaf. I'm a huge fan of green tea in terms of the antioxidants it supplies. So a decaf green tea would be a great idea. I got a question here. Would the same rule apply for caffeine for shift workers? And no, it doesn't. But that being said, keep that sort of 12-hour window in mind. So when you are going to sleep, you do want to try to, keep yourself energized without caffeine leading up to the time that you are going to sleep. Ideally, as I say, in a perfect world, even giving yourself 10 hours. So, if your bedtime is going to be 8 a.m., then you're kind of working back from there, trying not to have that cup of coffee past a certain time. That would be 8 to 10 p.m. for someone just heading into work. Shift workers are a different entity altogether, but it is a great question. Habit number 2, and this is a big one that we're going to chat about, is the idea of exposing yourself to early morning and late day sunlight. This is huge. So our eyes actually have receptors on them, not the rods and cones, so not necessarily for eyesight, but actually just to detect light. And that's going to send the really important messages to the brain about sleep-wake cycles. It's absolutely massive in terms of promoting quality sleep. So in a perfect world, we want to get up in the morning, and within the first hour we are awake, we want to get early sun. Ideally, we want to be outside to do so. It doesn't really work as well if we're doing so through a window, although I would argue it's certainly better than nothing. But in a perfect world, we want to get outside. The literature supports about 20 to 30 minutes. Now, again, I'm being realistic. We don't always have that kind of time. But even 5 minutes, in my opinion, is better than nothing. So if we're able to get outside, again, in a perfect world, maybe that's a great time to start moving your body. That's not always a reality to everyone either. So maybe you're sitting and having your morning cup of coffee outside once the weather turns a little warmer. That would also be a great option. We want to face the sun, whether it's coming up or going down. I'm not asking you certainly to stare straight into the sun, but I do want you to sort of face the sun, as well as we're better to do it without sunglasses on. So we actually want that sun coming into the eyes so that the eyes can then pass that message on to the brain that we're either waking up and then again producing all of these neurochemicals that help with motivation, things like dopamine, cortisol, adrenaline. And then at night, same thing. We're noticing the sun is going down. We're taking that sunlight in around the dusk hour, and it's a message to the brain that that it's time to start getting ready for sleep. And again, so other neurochemicals are going to be being produced at that time, as well as sort of a initiation of melatonin production, which we know is very important to our sleep. I'm just reading another question here. It says, does light therapy count? It is definitely an option. I'm actually a big fan of those, the light therapy in the wintertime especially. I think sunlight you know, as we're heading into warmer temperatures is going to be the better option. But definitely throughout the winter, on a cold day, on cold winter days, light therapy is definitely a great option, a second option for that. Or, you know, the alarm clocks that actually light up. I love that idea with the light therapy as well. Okay, so we talked about not wearing our sunglasses, late day exposure, relaying that message to the brain. Through the night, or even as we're coming in from that sort of late day sun exposure, we want to make sure all the overhead lights are off in the house if possible. We do really want to keep the house quite dim. So try using lamps, candlelight, obviously, if you're able, but try to keep overhead lights off. We really want, again, to signal to the body that we're heading towards sleep. And melatonin production in particular is very sensitive to light. So we really do, you know, after 7 o'clock or so, we want to make sure that we're really dimming the lights in the house, keeping everything quite low. And then through the night, if you're waking up, same thing. You want to really avoid turning on the lights as much as possible. So if you can, avoid using a screen if you're waking up through the night, or avoid turning a lot of overhead lights on, then you're going to have a better time falling asleep. Again, melatonin is so sensitive to that bright light that we will start to initiate the turn off of melatonin if there's too much light when we're waking up in the middle of the night. So we want to keep the lights fairly low. Another sort of tip, if we're struggling to get back to sleep, or we can do it obviously anytime throughout the day. I do prefer patients to do it at night if possible, before bed, or as I say, if you're struggling to get back to sleep if you've woken up, is something called now I'm forgetting the acronym. So basically, we're talking about meditation, we're talking about yoga nidra, we're talking about an idea of self-hypnosis. So these are all things that are just very calming to the nervous system. They teach the nervous system how to calm down and prepare, ideally, for something like sleep. So it's a really great practice. You can get there's so many YouTube videos and free apps that you can get that will help you, walk you through different meditations for sleep, or help self-hypnosis for sleep, or like I say, just a 10-minute yoga nidra class, which is not a movement class. You are just lying there. They're walking you through some visualizations, can play a big role in helping with sleep as well. So that's just another tip for someone who's really struggling. If meditation or yoga or that idea of self-hypnosis kind of speaks to you, that it can be so powerful. And we can do it, as I say, anytime throughout the day to sort of teach our body what it feels like to settle down and calm down. But certainly it's quite helpful through the night if we're waking up and unable to get back to sleep as well. Habit number 3 is actually geared toward those folks that maybe aren't going to bed quite as early as they need to. And I hear this so often in practice, where a patient will say, I know I need to go to bed earlier, I just can't get up off the couch. And I experienced this myself. And I will say this one is a little bit less research focused and more just my personal experience, but I find it quite effective. You know, when we're done, when we're finished dinner, when we've gone for a little walk, we've cleaned up, we're ready to sit down for the night, I think it's really important for us to get ready for bed before we sit down. So I want you to brush your teeth. I want you to wash your face. I want you to do all of that before you go to sit down to watch your TV. Or read your book, or whatever it is you're doing. Reason being, we tend to crash. We tend to get quite tired. We sit down and we're literally too tired to get ready for bed, so we stay up later than we should. Does that speak to anyone? I know I do it all of the time. So if we get ready for bed, we've brushed our teeth, we've washed our face, we've gone to the washroom, we're good to go, and we start to get sleepy as we're sitting there reading our book or watching TV or having a conversation with our spouse, all we have to do is get up and go to sleep. So again, this also applies to those who find themselves falling asleep in front of the TV before going to bed, because that impacts our sleep so much. Then we're getting up, going to bed, and falling back to sleep. Already we've interfered with our quality of sleep. So I really highly encourage that idea of getting ready for bed before you sit down. It makes a massive difference. I know I find I go to bed earlier when I'm doing that. So give that a try. I'm not going to be talking a lot about supplements today because it's very individual. If you're looking for supplementation that can help with these things, there's certainly a ton of options, but I would want you to speak to your naturopathic doctor or your medical doctor to make sure that different supplements are right for you. One I will mention that is, or two I will mention actually in regards to sleep, that is worthwhile to have a conversation either with your medical doctor or your naturopathic doctor if you have one, are both magnesium, specifically magnesium glycinate or bisglycinate, or a magnesium threonate, as well as something called L-theanine, which is an amino acid that's actually found in tea, along with many other things. And it's really quite calming to the nervous system. And I found both of those quite helpful with sleep. Again, those are ones I don't recommend that patients take on their own without talking to a medical practitioner first, just to make sure it's right for you. But those are additional options when talking about sleep, and can be useful, especially if you've implemented many of these habits and still finding that you're struggling. Okay, so that's kind of the sleep piece. So let's assume we're sleeping really well. Now it's time to focus on what we're eating throughout our day that can also optimally affect our mood. So we're going to talk about nutrition. It really seems like a bit of a no-brainer for me to say that what you're eating affects how you're feeling. And yet I need to say it over and over again, because again, people aren't always putting that together. What you're eating affects how you're feeling. So in general, we want to limit refined carbohydrates. We want to limit refined sugars. We want a diet that really focuses on healthy proteins and fiber. So important in terms of balancing our energy levels and promoting a healthy mood. We're going to chat about one specific habit first, and that is eating breakfast, number one. So I'm shocked at the number of patients that don't eat breakfast. I don't know if there's any teens on this talk or parents of teens, but that's a big one for teenagers. They generally do not leave themselves time for breakfast, and then they're feeling anxious or down the entire day, and they don't understand why, and they haven't fueled themselves for the first part of their day. It's massive. So we need to eat something in the morning. And along with that, I cannot stress this enough, it needs to be protein rich. So a bowl of cereal in the morning doesn't cut it. I really, really want you to focus on protein in the morning. So again, it doesn't have to be an animal protein. I think that sort of turns people off. We're talking about eggs if that's something that sits well with you. A protein smoothie would be a good option, even just sort of a combination of nuts and seeds, but protein is essential. And I'll tell you why. So protein, once it's broken down into the body, is broken down into amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks for many of the neurochemicals of the hormones that we use to regulate mood. The other thing about protein is that it helps to balance our blood sugar levels. So if we have something that's very carbohydrate rich, we tend to metabolize it quite quickly. It causes our blood sugar to go up again quite quickly. And then we're kind of chasing that all day long, where we get a little high, but then we crash quite quickly, and then we're grabbing something else. And usually, again, our body's craving something carb rich because we need that energy quickly. And so we're doing a lot of this up and down. Protein's really going to stabilize that release of blood sugar. Fiber does the same thing, so that we have that sort of even amount of energy or supply of energy throughout the morning. So it prevents a lot of that crashing with that up and down in our blood sugar. I mean, does anyone know that term hangry? When our blood sugar dips, it definitely affects our mood. That's an aspect of that. So another sort of benefit to eating that protein-rich breakfast. The other thing with protein, again, in relation to blood sugar, but from a metabolic standpoint as well, is it provides quite a bit of energy for us. So if we're feeling fatigued throughout the morning, again, that doesn't necessarily help with our mood. So it's going to provide energy, protein. It's going to help to regulate our blood sugar, and it's going to help to feed and supply those neurochemicals that are so important for our mood. Dopamine, serotonin, all of these, all of our hormones that again are essential for healthy mood. One amino acid in particular, L-tyrosine, is really important for the production of dopamine. Dopamine, especially in the morning, is really important for motivation and drive and focus. So just a special sort of shout out to L-tyrosine. We want to eat foods such as nuts and seeds, peanuts, pumpkin seeds are both really rich in L-tyrosine, cottage cheese, tofu, milk, oats, avocado, banana, all great examples. Again, some of those protein rich, some of them are just great combos with the protein. As I say, eggs, or you can combine a couple eggs with a sprouted bread or really high fiber piece of toast or bread. That's a great breakfast option for you. Protein smoothies or protein shakes, and again, some sort of combination of nuts and seeds. Even if you're just doing a simple bowl of cereal, adding say 2 or 3 tablespoons of hemp hearts. Okay, great. Now you've got about somewhere between 6 and 10 grams of protein just with the hemp hearts alone. And now you have a more nutrient dense breakfast. It's going to keep you going for a little bit longer. It's going to help to support those neurochemicals. It's going to help to support energy, and it's going to help to balance blood sugar. Protein in the morning, so important. Habit number 2, and this one's going to sound a bit contradictory at first, so just kind of bear with me, because we're going to do 1 or 2 things, and this is where the idea of individual medicine comes in. So it's really going to depend on you, and it's really going to depend on a little bit of trial and error in order for you to tell which one feels better. And that's the idea of actually either having a protein-rich snack before bed or actually fasting at night and not having anything to eat after dinner. I personally find it more effective for me not to eat after dinner. Some people find that, going back to the sleep issue, that they're waking up throughout the night, usually around 2, 3, 4 a.m. If their blood sugar is getting too low, they're waking through the night, they're hungry, their body thinks, I must need to eat, so it must be time for me to get up, and that's why they're waking so early. So that's where that variability comes in. So I want you to test it out for yourself. Can you, say, finish eating at 6, 7 o'clock and fast until the morning? Great. Again, there's a ton of benefits to that 12 to 13 hour fast. It helps to regulate blood sugar. It helps to reduce inflammation. It's great for lots of different reasons, very weight supportive. But again, if you find blood sugar is getting low through the night and you need that nighttime snack, then again, we need it to be protein rich so that we're helping to balance blood sugar throughout the night and you're not finding you are waking through the night. So this habit, as I say, is generally related to how well you are sleeping, but that in turn is going to relate to how we're feeling and what our mood is like. So I do want you to experiment with that a little bit. You know, common snacks at night are chips, sometimes chocolate. We're not looking at protein-rich options. We're looking at things that are affecting blood sugar, that aren't very nutrient dense, and we're not feeling really great because of them. I would say the same thing for alcohol, although, you know, zero judgment. I have a glass of wine the odd night before after dinner, before I go to sleep, but I do find it 100% affects my sleep. So I need to be very careful, and I am very careful with that. That's a good little experiment for you. You know, on a night you're not having a drink versus a night you are having a drink, are you sleeping more soundly? It does make a big difference. And then you can decide, right? But at least you know what these factors are. Okay, in terms of nutrition, again, going back to the idea of diet as well as supplementation, I just want to give a little shout out to probiotic or healthy gut bacteria. Again, this can be a supplement, or we can get these healthy bacteria in with food. Things like sauerkraut, yogurt, if you're able to do dairy, kefir, kimchi, anything really fermented is going to have a ton of that healthy gut bacteria. So the issue with the gut is that the majority of our serotonin production is actually made in the gut. I think the stat is about 95%. So really the most of it. Serotonin is our feel-good hormone. It's our happy hormone. So we really do need a really healthy gut bacteria in order to promote the production of serotonin, dopamine, a few others actually as well, also made in the gut. So we want foods, we want probiotic foods, or we can take a probiotic again as a supplement. Please do talk to your medical doctor, your naturopathic doctor before starting any supplementation. And we also want a high fiber diet, particularly a diet high in prebiotic fiber, which is just a type of fiber that helps us to produce probiotics in our own gut. So it stimulates our own production of healthy gut bacteria. Again, really, really important for mood. I think we're going to learn so much more about this field in the next couple of years, but this idea of gut health and mental, emotional health being so connected. Truly, it's so important what we're putting into our body in terms of our mental health. So sort of keeping that probiotic and the prebiotic fiber kind of in mind when you're building a sort of mood supportive diet is a really good idea. Okay, I haven't had any questions actually. Is everybody feeling pretty good about what we've gone over so far? Just kind of keep an eye on time here. Okay, next topic of conversation is exercise. So there's a lot of debate here in terms of what type of exercise and what time of day is the best time to exercise. And my answer to both is actually the same thing. It's whatever you will do. So if you hate walking, then don't make walking your your exercise of choice. There is some interesting information when it comes to habit forming. So if exercise at the moment is not really a habit, there is some interesting literature to support the idea of building a habit in the first part of our day. So at least initially, as we're trying to make exercise a habit, we are better to bring it in the first part of our day, ideally before, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So sometime between waking and that time. Again, our dopamine levels, our cortisol levels, our adrenaline levels tend to be highest during the early parts of the day, and therefore we are slightly more motivated to start a habit that might be a little bit harder to initiate. And exercise, I do find, is definitely one of those habits that tends to be a little bit harder to initiate. And so trying to do that, at least in the beginning, until it becomes more of a habit and easier to do, we are better to try to do that earlier in the day. That's more a motivation and a habit forming tip than it is an exercise tip. In terms of what type of exercise, again, really any type of exercise. Again, the literature supports any type of movement. The key is that we want to try to get about 150 to 180 minutes of cardiovascular activity a week. And we can break that up any way we want. Again, the literature seems to support, doing 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there. We don't have to take 45 minutes every single day. Not all of us have one chunk of 45 minutes in our day. So we can certainly break it up. We want to get our heart rate up during that time. We want it to be still easy to carry on a conversation. Or we want to be able, I should say, to carry on a conversation while exercising, although it shouldn't be super easy, right? We want to be exercising, we want our heart rate up just enough that we can carry on a conversation, but if we were doing much more, then that would be difficult. That's kind of how we know our heart rate is at that level that we want it to be. So exercise, huge. I did get a question, an example of a prebiotic fiber. An example of a prebiotic fiber would be inulin. And I'm just actually, so bananas, artichokes, asparagus, wheat. Again, that's just a simple like WebMD search of foods high in inulin, but hopefully that gives you some help there in terms of what some of those prebiotic fibers might be. Okay, the last thing I want to mention is the idea of connection. And I think this is particularly important at this time in our world when I feel like there is sort of a lack of connection between, as I say, self and others, right? I think something like this is great. We're all able to get online and listen to together, but in a perfect world, we're actually sharing a room and we're sharing our experiences and we're talking about our feelings. I don't think there's quite enough of that today. Let's start with the idea of connection to self, though. And this is really, really one of the take homes that I want you leaving this conversation with. The idea that you can impact your mental health, that you have a say in how you are feeling from a mental emotional standpoint. So how stressed you are, how much you're struggling, right? How overwhelmed you're feeling. I feel like we've lost a bit of that. We've lost a bit of that idea that we have a little bit more power than we're giving ourselves. So that connection to self, are you actually tapping in that idea between just sort of surviving and thriving? Are you tapping into how you're feeling? So how do I feel? There's 3 questions I want you asking yourself on a daily basis. How do I feel? Why do I feel this way? And what action can I take right now to feel better? So I'm feeling kind of down. Why am I feeling this way? Well, it turns out I actually haven't been moving my body over the last couple of days because I've been really busy and feeling quite stressed. So I've been making other things a priority. What action can I take? I can move my body. Or I haven't been eating very well, you know, a weekend away socializing, and now I'm crashing on Monday and I can't figure out why. Okay, I need to support my body with better fuel. And I mean, these are just the ideas that I've mentioned today, the exercise, the sleep, the nutrition. I know from my personal experience, I'm sure many moms of young children are feeling the same way. Is personal time is at a minimum. So sometimes I'll check in. Why am I feeling this way? Because I haven't had a moment to myself in the last 7 days straight. And so then I know, okay, what do I need to do? Maybe I will go for a walk, but maybe part of that is just getting out and being by myself for a minute. So really, really tapping in. Are we asking ourselves how we feel? And not to sort of call out the men in the group, but I feel like this is something that men in particular are not very great at, is really just, again, tapping in and asking themselves, how am I actually feeling? And why am I feeling this way? And again, giving ourselves a little bit of power back and saying, what can I do to change it? Right? I'm not sleeping well. I haven't moved my body in 2 days. Let's get some of that going so that I'm feeling better. And then see sort of what's left over. Connection to others. Again, I think these days we have a really big issue with asking for help. So yes, that can mean talking to a friend about how we're actually feeling, being vulnerable. It can mean talking to a professional. Again, I think everyone at some point in their life should do a little counseling just to experience it, because it's a pretty awesome opportunity to just talk something out. Again, just trying to connect. We're getting into better weather. I hope that means people, you know, if they're not comfortable at this point connecting with people in their homes, then calling up a friend, can we go for a walk together? Do you want to meet at the park and just have a tea? Something like that, but actually connecting with people in person. Again, this is a big one for teens. I feel like there's a lot of online communication happening right now and not a lot of in-person communication, and it really does it prevents real connection, and we need that connection so bad. Humans are hardwired for that connection with people, and I think it's been lacking, and I think it really is affecting mental health. So connection to self, connection to others. And then I want to just quickly talk about the idea of acts of service, connection to the community. And I find this with my retired patients, even more so than any other population, but I think it applies to everyone. The idea of sort of feeling like there's a purpose, and the research and literature that supports the idea of acts of service actually helping to increase all of those, again, neurochemicals, the dopamine, the serotonin that make us feel good. So getting out there, and whether it's just an act of kindness for a close friend that you know is going through a hard time, or again, providing more of a service to the community at large. But I do think that's something we really need to, and again, maybe something that's fallen off over the last 2 years with COVID. But what can you do to help others? And you know, maybe it sounds selfish, but inevitably we're doing it to help ourselves, right? So it's benefiting both groups. I really feel like that's just a huge thing that I wanted to highlight today before we finished. Okay, someone said, could you please repeat the names of the supplements you mentioned earlier? So in relation to sleep, two great ones to ask your doctor or your naturopath about would be magnesium glycinate or magnesium threonate, and then something called L-theanine, which is an amino acid. So if you have more questions about those, again, I'm not sure if Jane can give you sort of my contact information, but I'm happy for you to email me and I can answer a few more questions about those supplements specifically if you'd like, okay?
Yeah, I can definitely email everybody, or you can email the library and I can send you Jody's contact info.
Sure, that would be great. Okay, so just to kind of recap, and then I'm going to open things up for questions. Hopefully a few people have some questions as well. I really want everyone leaving today feeling slightly empowered that there are things, again, actionable steps that you can take in order to improve these foundations for mental health. Again, some might seem like harder habits to implement than others, but just knowing that implementing these, doing these small things, doing these small changes, baby steps, try one or two of these ideas and see the difference they make and then sort of build upon them. But I really want everyone to feel sort of empowered and like they have a few things that they can actually try, again, to sort of impact the way that they are feeling, whether they're feeling like they're struggling or overwhelmed or stressed out or sad, and see the difference it makes in mood. There are obviously a million things we can do, supplement-wise, medication-wise, counseling, but I feel like these foundations are just so vitally important. And if we're building a house and the foundation is crumbling, we don't have much of a house, do we? So we really need to focus on these aspects of things. We need to be getting quality sleep. We need to be eating for our mood. We need to be eating healthy. We need to be moving our body in some way. And I truly believe we need to be a little bit more connected to ourselves and definitely more connected to our community at large in order to sort of benefit from a mental health standpoint. So that is the message today. I will open things up to questions if anyone has anything they'd like to ask. Lots of questions.
Feel free to turn your mic back on or your camera back on if you'd like to ask a question,
if you'd like,
or
yeah.
You can put it in the chat. And
again, if you know, again, this is being recorded, so if people have some questions that they like to ask that are a little bit more personal, please don't hesitate to contact Jane, or again, you can email me directly. For those who are writing down, my email address is nd, naturopathic doctor nd @jodysnider.ca, and I welcome any questions that you may have. Someone's asking what my opinion about cannabis use for sleep is. I think it has a place for sure. I have to be careful because right now naturopathic doctors can actually not recommend or prescribe cannabis for pain or for sleep for any reason at this point. That being said, I do think the literature is very supportive. I know with my patients, it works very well for some and others don't respond to it. Like anything, right? There's a lot of individuality there. I think there's a lot of playing we need to do in terms of knowing how much we need to be using and what dose we need to be using. But I think that it is getting some positive results for many people. The research team seems to support it. So I'm all for it if it works, right? Absolutely. Would you say trying to adopt some of the nutrition advice would help with evening snacking, junk food, as a way to de-stress? Absolutely. So I do see that impact with breakfast in particular, where if we're eating earlier in the day, breakfast seems to be the one that everyone is skipping. And so they don't start fueling themselves till lunch, and then they end up snacking more in the evening because they need the fuel, and their body is looking. Yes, we do a lot of emotional eating in the night as well. So some of it's habit, and you just need to change the habit. Again, pour yourself an herbal tea, keep your hands on the mug, right? Just keep yourself busy in that way, as opposed to eating the chips or the junk food. But yes, 100%, you will notice a difference when eating a protein-rich breakfast in terms of how you're able to control your nighttime eating, without question.
Anybody else have any questions? Quiet group tonight.
It is.
Oh, somebody's trying to come in at this hour. There we go. Oh, another one there, Jody.
Yeah, are melatonin supplements indicated for specific situations? Yes, I would say so. So I do like melatonin, but melatonin is definitely more effective for a sleep onset insomnia. So it can be a great tool if you're having trouble falling asleep. It's not as effective, in my opinion, for someone who's struggling with staying asleep. If you fall asleep, no problem. Melatonin is probably not going to be super effective for you. The other thing is, I don't think melatonin should be used for a really long period of time, so it shouldn't be used indefinitely. I kind of like to use it as a way to remind the body of when melatonin production should be increased, and sort of when we're supposed to be sleeping versus when we're supposed to be awake. And then I like my patients to take breaks. It is a hormone, so we do want to be slightly careful with it. I'm also a much bigger fan of I used to do higher doses of melatonin, but now I keep them quite low. So I generally just try to do 1, 2, maximum like 3 milligrams of melatonin. I know that there are melatonin supplements on the market that are even like start at 10 milligrams. I find that a little bit high. That's one, again, I really feel like is a good one to chat with your medical doctor or your naturopathic doctor about. But in terms of just answering that question, is it indicated for specific situations? It is much more effective for a sleep onset insomnia. So that person that struggles to fall asleep specifically.
Anybody else? I guess that's it. And again, you can contact Jody or you can contact the library if you think of anything, and we can put you in touch with Jody if you, for some reason, can't get a hold of her or write, you wrote her email address down wrong or something. Please feel free to contact us at the library and we'll make sure we connect you with Jody. So thank you. Oh, hang on. Oh, somebody's saying thank you.
Somebody's saying thank you. That's very nice. Thank you very much. I hope everyone got some good information there tonight. Thank you so much for joining.
Oh, there's a question.
Oh, yeah. So someone just asking, for someone on the autism spectrum using stimulants, would there be different habits to incorporate? And I would say no, actually. Again, these are very universal habits. I can't see how any of this would be changing if you were using some of those stimulant medications, again, being on the spectrum. We still really want to focus on sleep. We still really want to focus on healthy diet, getting the refined sugars out, really focusing on fiber and protein. We definitely want to get the body moving. I'd say all of these foundations very, very much apply to that group, actually.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jody. It was really awesome. I've learned a lot and I have some major changes to make. So really appreciate you joining us tonight. I'd love to have you back when we can actually be in person.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, so everybody keep your eyes open for that on our website or e-newsletter. If you don't get our e-newsletter, please sign up for it because it tells you all the fun stuff we have coming up. And it's right at your email, so you'll know 100%. But thank you. It was wonderful, Jody. Really appreciate it. And thank you.
Thanks again so much for having me.
You're quite welcome. And thanks everybody for joining us. I am going to now end the record.
Bye, everybody.